Before I got sober, I was so self-centered. I only thought of me. Me, what about me? What about me? What about I? And even though I had a good heart sometimes I would do some nice things. Sometimes I'd show up for you. But the majority of the time, I did whatever it is that I wanted to do, and I did not concern anyone else in the process. It was impossible. I was
Yes,
sick.
yes.
It was a sickness of the mind. You know what I mean? And alcohol was destroying me. Not only alcohol, not eating right, not
Yeah.
exercising, not hanging out with the right people, being participating in activities that I shouldn't be participating in, all of the above. But it had to be mind blowing in order for me to get it. My whole life had to blow up.
Yeah.
I had to have nothing and be grateful in the nothingness that I still have my life and that nobody died because of me.
Welcome to the Teen Rockstar Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm Naomi Nye, your host and guide on this electrifying journey where we dive deep into the realms of education, parenting, mindset, entrepreneurship, and the pursuit of passion. Join me and a lineup of incredible guests as we unravel the secrets to conquering challenges in every facet of life. Together, we'll explore how you and your family can not only face obstacles head on, but also emerge stronger, wiser, and ready to unleash your true potential. This is the Teen Rockstar Entrepreneur Podcast, where we rock the world with passion, purpose, and unstoppable entrepreneurial spirit.
Welcome to the Teen Rockstar Entrepreneur Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about a subject that I have been wanting to talk about for a long time on this platform, and we haven't had the opportunity, and we're going to do it today. It's about the sexualization, the indoctrination, the grooming of children, what is happening in our school system, what's happening on social media, what's happening worldwide, and we're going to dive into all these topics. We're going to talk about LGBTQ plus content as well, and to have this conversation, I have Jana with me, which is a digital creator, influencer known as Super Awesome FTL. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to have this conversation with you here. I'm super excited to dive into this. I'm a big advocate for educating people on the horrors of what's actually going on in our society today with our children. Very sad.
Yes, it
And
is.
there's a lot of people that are unaware, or that they're aware and they actually don't care, or they don't want to know. They don't want to look at it because, if you don't know, you don't have to change it. But once you do know, then you got to do something. And a
Yeah,
lot of people are scared or they're lazy. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, that's the
yeah.
truth. You got the same 24 hours as the next person. How are we utilizing our time in those 24 hours?
Exactly. And it's important. I feel like we're at a time right now where you can't ignore these issues any longer. Like you might have been able to do it 20, 30 years ago. Even if you, like, for example, I'm a person who has never wanted to get into politics. But right now, it feels like we are all being made to make a choice. We have to pick a side because literally there is no in between anymore, and the stakes are just too high. And like I was mentioning earlier, I am particularly worried about children because as adults, you and I, we have life experience, we have knowledge, we have the capacity, we have our prefrontal cortex that's already fully developed. We can reason through things, and still we struggle. But I feel that children don't have that capacity and they are totally being attacked. And that is what really drives me crazy. And like you said, I feel that a lot of people do it, one, because they don't want to be penalized. Like right now, talking about this is such a hot topic that you're either going to lose friends, you're going to either lose views on social media. If you work at a certain place, you might even lose your job. So I feel like some people are afraid because they don't have the luxury sometimes, or they're just afraid to stand up. And then some other people think that this is just something that we're making a big deal out of, that it's really not that serious, that it's just happening a little bit, and that we are just blowing it up. And I think that that's a crazy notion because it's not. And even if you thought that it was a little bit, well, if we know how disease works, you know how when something's rotted, if you have a little rotted piece in your apple and you don't cut it out, what happens in a couple of hours? What happens the day after? It'll completely rot. So I think it's ignorant to even think that, oh, it's so small, it's fringe, we shouldn't worry about it, because fringes turn into, colds turns into mainstream. I don't know if you've heard of the overtone window, but that's pretty much how the overtone window works. It starts with something that we're disgusted with, and we get so accustomed to hearing it and hearing it and hearing it that it gets to a certain point that if we don't stop it, we accept it.
Hi folks, my name is Miranda. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a licensed professional counselor and sex therapist in Erie, Pennsylvania. And today I want to talk about minor attracted persons. And I want to talk about minor attracted persons because they are probably the most vilified population of folks in our culture. And most folks are making incorrect assumptions about them without actually knowing much about them. And those assumptions create harm for an already marginalized population. You may have noticed that I'm using the term minor attracted persons, sometimes abbreviated to MAPS, instead of the more commonly used term pedophile. And I'm doing this because the term pedophile has moved from being a diagnostic label to being a judgmental, hurtful insult that we hurl at people in order to harm them or slander them. I also prefer person first language that recognizes that any label we might apply to a person is only part of who they are and doesn't represent everything that they are. This term simply means that the person has an enduring sexual or romantic attraction to minors. They've not chosen this attraction, just as the rest of us have not chosen whatever our attraction is. You don't get to choose to be heterosexual or to be gay or whatever you are. And you don't get to choose to be a minor attracted person.
You know, at the end of the day, when you're allowing, harm to be done to children, and you're not saying anything, or, you know what I mean, you're not fighting it off, you literally are part of that problem. But the sad thing is that you don't even know it. Well, if you kind of think about it, is that's what people are doing with their whole entire life. There's not very many people that are self-aware and actually die to self and go, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to participate in this. I'm not going to do this. 9 times out of 10, they're going to be aware and see what it is that we are seeing. But people that neglect things in their life and push it under the rug and, avoid and blame others, those type of people can't even get it in their own life. And how could we expect it for them to get it for somebody else? You know what I mean? You don't know until you know. I got sober 5 years ago, and I'll tell you, before I got sober, I was so self-centered. I only thought of me. What about me? What about me? What about I? And even though I had a good heart, sometimes I would do some nice things. Sometimes I'd show up for you. But the majority of the time, I did whatever it is that I wanted to do, and I did not concern anyone else in the process. It was impossible. I was sick.
Yes.
It was a sickness of the mind. You know what I mean? And alcohol was destroying me. Not only alcohol, not eating right, not exercising, not hanging out with the right people, participating in activities that I shouldn't be participating in, all of the above. But it had to be mind blowing in order for me to get. My whole life had to blow up.
Yeah.
I had to have nothing and be grateful in the nothingness that I still have my life and that nobody died because of me. I got a DUI June 2nd, 2019, and I hit somebody, and that would change my life. And I'm very grateful. A lot of people go, oh man, this happened to me, but that's what shapes us. But my whole point was that you literally have to be very self-aware. Today, I can call out, you know what? Like when somebody says, "Hey, Jana, you're not doing that right." You know what I mean? You need to look at that. Today, I have the awareness to go. I might not like that you said that. It actually irritates me, and I'm probably going to talk a little crap in my head. You know what I mean? Like, what do you know? You don't know nothing. Look at you. You know what I mean? But then God allows me to like sit back with it, eat on it, and discard it if it's not, true, or work on it if it is. Like I
Yes.
can find a solution. So I mean, and a lot of people just don't.
Well, it goes back to what you said. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Kenzo versus the Satori awakening. So it's a very, very interesting Japanese metaphor where some of us are able to awaken and become self-aware and learn the lessons in life through bliss, the Satori way. Most of us have to be hit in the head and have to suffer our way through our learning and have the awakening through loss, which is the Kenzo. And it's basically what you're saying. And I think it's part of the human condition that we literally will not face what we have to face until we have to. And I, like you, in 2017, lost everything, tried to take my own life. I mean, I wanted out. And through that awakening is when everything began to change. And I feel like this is what happens with most people. But the sad thing is that this is a result of our education system. Because, like you said, you don't know what you don't know. Okay. And it's like exactly what happened to me. Like I struggled so much in my life. And like you, I was self-centered and I'm a good person. But I was self-centered and I didn't even realize it. And I was a huge victim. I blamed everybody for everything. Like if something happened, it was never my fault. And that's the way I live my life. And I'm sure you're aware that that is no way to live. And people think that it's easy to live that way. It's temporarily easy. To me, it's like the dog that's sitting on the nail, complaining the entire time, going, "Arr, arr." It's like it doesn't hurt enough for you to get your ass up. You're still comfortable enough that you're not going to do anything, but you're hurting. And I feel like that's what we do through life till literally life says, "You didn't get it, did you? I'm going to hit you so hard this time that you're not going to be able to not look away."
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes we get like, with trauma, right? Is that sometimes the trauma like, even though it's heavy, you're carrying it throughout life, all your lifetimes, right? You're carrying this trauma that happened to you, and whether it was your fault, it wasn't your fault, whatever the case is, sometimes it's scary because it's kind of covering us. The trauma's covering us of who we are, right? So we carrying it, and it feels comfortable to carry it because who are we without that trauma? You know what I mean? And then when you ask God to help you, and you allow Him to carry it, it kind of leaves you open and exposed. Like, you know what I mean? Like when you let go of it and you ask God to help you and take it, now you're exposed. Now everybody can see you. And that sometimes seems a lot scarier than, you know what I mean, just carrying on this baggage. I always say, when I got sober, I said, I didn't get sober to be mediocre. That I wanted to be different. I wanted to get to experience new problems because unfortunately, regardless of how I live my life, I'm always going to have problems.
Yes.
It's just part of life, but I want a
That's
new problem. No, yeah. Just for years, I never got to experience new problems. I was losing jobs because I don't know how to keep my mouth shut. My mom used to always say, "Jana, nobody knows how big a fool you are until you open your mouth." And I'd be like, and today I go, you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
it's been a whole experience.
Well, you know what it is? Sometimes it's wisdom. I'm very similar. I'm like, Naomi, shut your freaking mouth because I'm the same way. And it doesn't mean that what we're saying is is like dead on right sometimes, but sometimes it doesn't need to be said. And sometimes it's not the right time to say it. And sometimes it's just better not to say it at all. And that comes with wisdom. We're going back to what I said before. We're not taught that. And you don't know what you don't know, and you need to learn that. That's my pet peeve with the education system, because I always say this, and this is my dream. When I have a school, what we're going to be teaching is you first grade, you second grade, you third grade, you fourth grade, because really that's what it's about. It's about developing self-awareness, critical thinking skills, leadership skills, and mindset. Everything else is extra, like the math, the English, all of that. You'll do good at all of that naturally if you got this covered. And we don't do that in school. We're burying our children. I was reading something that infuriated me 2 days ago on Thomas Sowell. Do you know him?
I'll have to look him up.
He's fantastic. Well, he was doing some research on schools, and he was doing this because he was looking at his granddaughter's books. And when he did the research, he realized that 11th graders were doing the material that 8th graders were doing 30 years ago. Now, this interview he did 10 or 15 years ago. I have to look it up what year his interview was. So that means that 40 years ago. So the books that our seniors are getting today are the books that 8th graders were getting in the 90s. Why are we doing this? We're literally dumbing down our society, and there's a reason for that, and that's a big problem.
Well, if you dumb them down, then like if you're not educated for all of those things, then you can't properly like think of a problem and find a solution. They don't want you to have a solution.
Exactly.
They want you to be in constant chaos. And if you're educated, you know what I mean, that's impossible. It's just like slavery. They didn't want Black people to read, because if they could read,
Exactly.
then they could perform all different things that we were just talking about and save themselves. It's a form of power.
Yes, it is. And so it was the accident that caused you to have this awakening moment. How difficult was it for you to basically, because it's creating a new identity. Most of us live our lives on an ego-based reality where we're lying to ourselves about who we really are. We're inauthentic, and it's natural. We're all trying to hide our wounds. We're all trying to hide our ugly side. And so we create this persona, and this persona becomes so powerful because we will do anything to defend that persona. And it's crazy because we will lose relationships. We will lose money. We will lose anything in order to keep that persona alive. And so that persona has to die. And that is really hard. I believe that it's almost like a reincarnation process that we go through in this own experience. It's a reincarnation within this reincarnation. So talk to me a little bit about that experience. How was that for you?
Luckily, I have always wanted to be better. I had a very hard childhood. And so you adapt and you get the sins of the father.
Yes.
Whatever your parents don't take care of and in their life is passed down to you.
Yes.
And if you don't want to pass it down to your kids, then you're gonna have to identify it, you're gonna have to see it, and you're gonna have to. I never understood that. I just saw problems my whole life. Nobody gave me any solution because my parents didn't know better. My father was sick. He was a predator. He was horrible to boys, and he did some bad things and he went to prison for a long time. My mom, is an ostrich. I love her, you know what I mean? But she was an ostrich at the time. Once she came and she realized what was going on, she got us out of there. But by that time, a lot had already occurred.
Yes.
I would have already actually assaulted and tell no one. You know what I mean? And live with that on top of the fact, and that had nothing to do with my father, because my father was into little boys.
Right, but it's energy.
It was that energy, you know what I mean? And it was going to come after me regardless. And so in that, there's a lot of trauma. I'm only in the 4th grade and all of this has already happened. I haven't had much time. So it would be a very troublesome decades before I was willing to go, you know what, maybe what I'm doing currently isn't working. And that is where the awakening came. My mom got me out of jail. This would be my 2nd DUI. and just seeing her pick me up, I never wanted to experience that again. I didn't want her to see that shame again because she was so very good.
Well, one, I'm sorry that you went through that experience. That must have been really hard, and I'm sorry about your father. And it's crazy how it works, but I do believe that it has to do with energy. And like you said, our biggest influence in life is the relationship we have with our caregivers. Based on that relationship is how we live our lives, and most importantly, how we handle our relationships in adult life. And the thing is that, like, whatever needs weren't met, we go searching for them in our future relationships growing up. The same way with our traumas, sometimes I saw this in my own personal life. I would repel healthy relationships. You know why? Because I thought they were boring. And I don't know if you can relate to this, because trauma becomes your home. Your version of normal is crazy. You're in that vibration. So everything else just feels off to you. And it's mind blowing until you realize that you're actually going through that.
Well, it's funny is that I've never been in a relationship outside of being with married women ever,
And why do you think that is?
because then there's no commitment. You know what I mean? And it's more of a game than it is anything. It's not real life. It's fantasy. How can you be with somebody that's already taken?
Exactly.
And there goes my self-centeredness. I don't care about the husband. I don't
Right.
care about the kid. I don't care about the well-being of her, in all
Right.
honesty. Because if you're living like that and you're doing things like that, you are more than welcome to act like that. However, you reap what you sow. And for me, that was to the point where I don't date anymore. I just have decided to live my life of service because I don't know how to love people properly, and I don't know how to receive love yet. You know what I mean? That's stuff that I'm
Yes.
still learning. I've only been 5 years. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
I'm, I'm like maybe like 15, 18 now. I
Yes.
have a little bit of time. I have to live the childhood that I didn't get to have in innocence without being clouded up by immorality, just sleeping around, or even like, because a lot of today's society, dating means sleeping with each other
Yeah.
when that shouldn't be something that we go to, because I feel like that should be the last thing on the list of the things that we want in a partner.
Yeah. And it's really sad because we're going straight into in a secular world, and I see all of these values dying, and I was the same. I was very hedonistic, and I see that our society is going this way, and it saddens me because it's a very empty life. You think that you're happy, but the pleasure is so temporary, and then it's just like everything else. It's like with alcohol, with drugs, you gotta up it a little more because it just gets boring after a certain more. And now you have to up it and up it. And I see this with our society, I see this with our youth, and it's really sad because we're losing the essence of what life is. And it's like, how do we now go back and start teaching youth that that's not the most important thing? Like getting your ideas from porn sites and trying to live this lifestyle, that's not what a relationship is. And I feel like we're at a point right now where we're gonna have to go back so far. It's like a starting anew in order to be able to change what is happening, and particularly with youth. Because if not, we're gonna keep on doing the same thing. We could avoid all of this. Like, for example, you and I, we could have been having this conversation in our 20s instead of having this conversation now. And that's what should be happening.
I 100% agree, but it's hard. I mean, at the end of the day, that's all sin. All of that sleeping around, the lying, the cheating, the whatever, it's all sin. We're all missing the mark. Who wants to be an adulteress? Who wants to be, a liar? Like, none of that sounds appealing, and I don't think that was my intent, but that was what I was, and until I could recognize that that was what I was doing, that was the person I had become. And if I wanted to have a life worth living, you have to understand that I've had mental illness all of my life. So I mean, I do not find that this work is very easy, but nothing that has ever been easy has been worth it. And I think a lot of people stuff uh drugs, alcohol, women, and men all these different highs in place of where God needs to be. And a lot of people are like, no, there's no God. Or, I mean, you can live your life like that, but you'll continue to get what you're getting. And, that's a choice that you choose to make. I mean, for me, I choose to believe in God, and it has manifested all the way to, like, I believe in Jesus Christ. I've been saved. I live a life of service, and that's for me. That's what makes me happy. Like, I always, you always worry about, oh, what's other people going to say? What are they going to think? Well, I mean, if they don't want to participate, I'm cool with that. But that's what you get to choose. This is a free country. Do whatever you
Yes.
want. This is how I choose to live. You know what? I'm happier than I ever have been in my whole entire life. So when you were talking about being reincarnated, now I do believe that, once I'm done, I'm done. That's all I get. You know what I mean? However, that reincarnation, because who I was when I was 10, completely different than who I was when I was 20. Who I was when I was 20 is completely different than who I was when I was 30. And then now 40. We get the opportunity to get better, but it takes action. And a lot of people just, that action is very difficult. It's not easy. Like, how many people want to die to their flesh? It's like, I stopped drinking, I stopped sleeping around, I stopped smoking cigarettes,
And
I
it's hard.
started, doing service work. You know what I mean? Like, those are not easy things to
No.
do.
I've thought about it myself sometimes. I've thought, my God, and this is something that I try not to say very much because I don't want to discourage anyone, but I've thought, wow, this change has been just as hard as some of the horrible experiences that I have had in my life. That is how hard it's been to be able to change the person that I was into the person that I'm becoming. And like you, I say the same thing. It's a work in progress. This is not done. But it is very hard letting go of all those things. But it's something that I always tell young people. It's a different kind of happiness. For example, you can drink alcohol and you could feel happy, but once the alcohol is gone, guess what? So's your happiness. And next time, you're gonna need to drink a little bit more alcohol to be happy like that time. And the next time, you're gonna have to drink more alcohol in that time, and that time, and that time to be happy. And then without the alcohol, you're always gonna not be happy. And on top of not being happy, you're not gonna feel good about yourself. Okay, you're not being productive. You don't have any self-worth because there is nothing there for you to feel good about yourself. And so you have to do a trade. What's it gonna be? I say, like you say, life is about challenges, life is about pain. You got to pick your pain. Are you going to be in pain forever, just running away from everything, just drinking your way, to sleep every night, and ignoring it? Or are you going to have the pain of letting go of all of that, which is really, really hard, and sitting with yourself, which is even harder, and sitting in that stillness without running to those things? Like, literally, I used to feel it like it's like a different type of anxiety. And it's like, be still, be still. And you just have to pick your pain, but you're gonna suffer regardless.
Nobody's getting out of this alive. You know,
Exactly.
that's what I like to say. At the end of the day, like, even though I suffer, the reward is so beautiful on the other side of this. The reward for sleeping around and for drinking and drugging, that was jail. That was, broken relationships. That was hopelessness. That was, I was self-mutilating. Like, when I say I was addicted from the beginning, the moment that those things started to happen to me, the first thing I went to was cutting myself. I'm 8 years old with paper clips, and I'm doing, it's very minor until, like, of course, like any addiction, right? What once could satisfy me no longer satisfy me. So I have to go even further with it. When there wasn't cutting, there was drinking, there was alcohol, that, like, it was always something to fill it, And when I finally got to the end of that road and I came to a dead end, that was when I realized that all of those things were not going to fix me, that there was only one source that would ever fix me, and that would be God. And that was when I just had no other options. It wasn't that I wanted to go that way, but it was just, I tried all the avenues, you know what I mean? Like, I've gone all the ways, and there's nowhere else for me to go other than to either kill myself or to get sober.
Yes.
There was only two options. So, and I really, as a young child, always prayed, God, let me be better. And so with that, like, when I finally got it together, because I had had sobriety before, but I only did just enough. Yeah, you can stop drinking or drugging. You're still there. You're still left with all those toxic traits. You just don't have a solution.
Yeah.
Alcohol, cutting, sleeping with other women, doing all that kind of behavior was my solution
Right.
rather than, allowing God to be my solution and that I could be guided by something greater, because we're all being guided.
Yes.
The drugs you take in, the alcohol, like even the social media,
Yeah.
all of this kind of stuff will produce fruits of the spirit. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's either bad fruit or good fruit. You get to decide. You know what I mean? Today I have self-control. I have
Yeah.
kindness. There's just so many different things I'm able to do today that I was incapable of doing before. So you have true freedom. Because if I
Yeah.
have to have a drink, I'm a slave.
Yes.
I'm a slave to the alcohol.
Yep.
If I have to have a drug, I'm a slave.
Yep.
But you find out that either way you're going to be a slave to what's evil or a slave to what is good. And what's the payoff? Like the price better be worth the payoff. You know what I mean? And it just, the price wasn't worth the payoff when I was drinking and drugging and living for myself. It didn't take me anywhere. And I'm
Yeah.
grateful. I'm grateful it didn't take me anywhere because it could
Right.
have led me to death or a long prison sentence,
Exactly.
or harming somebody else. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it could have been a lot worse than it was. Even though I suffered a lot, today I'm blessed a lot.
What do you think would have helped you, even if you would have had the same challenges you had? What things that you know now would have helped your younger self, or what would you tell your younger self today?
Even if you think you feel like it's true, it might not necessarily be. I think a lot of self-hate was on myself. Like, and even though we think these bad things about us, doesn't necessarily mean it's true. And I wish somebody could have told me that because I didn't know that because I thought it was true.
Me
You know what
too.
I mean? Like, in society, that's what they go off of. Well, I
Uh-huh.
feel like I identify as X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? But you can feel something and not be true at the same time.
Yes. That is so true. I felt
You
the
know,
same.
and I wish I would have had that now with my nephew. I get down, with him, and because my sister had him, but he is me. Like the way he is, how he acts, his humor, we're very much the similar. And I have these serious conversations with him because I want him to be able to think outside the box. I want him to be okay. You know what I mean? I don't want him to have to go through what I went through. And the reason I gave up smoking, the reason I start working out, like all these different things is so that he knows that it's possible. You see, I didn't ever think these things were possible because my parents did. How can we be of an example? People were like, oh, nobody does that. Okay, then you be the person that does it. Stop talking about what other people are doing, start doing it for yourself. If that's something that you need, you do it. Even if
Yes.
you don't know how to do it, hang out with the people that are doing it. Or watch a video on how to be that. Do something. Like I have had so many cool opportunities in the last 5 years. I've been able to speak at two capitals in front of the criminal committee and help pass at least one bill. And how awesome is somebody that has never been to college? I don't have any qualifications. I'm just an alcoholic. There's not much to me. You know what I mean? I had a hard life, but here I am being able to be an impact on the world. It's a drive that, I never saw myself taking. I never, like,
Yeah.
what? If you would have told me 5 years, you're going to be doing this, that, I'm like, you're smoking crack. That's not who I am, but it is. I just didn't get to meet this version of myself because I was feeding that bad spirit rather than the good.
Again, it's like you said, you don't know what you don't know. And the sad thing about our brain is that it has so much capacity, but it also can be very limited. It's like, unless some things, some ideas are introduced to us, we are not able to see the possibility. So we live very limited lives. And it's really sad. And that's why I told you that I was really upset when I found out that 12th graders are getting the curriculum books that 8th graders were getting 30 years ago, because again, it goes back to why are we limiting the mind so much? Because, we do have so much capacity, because you are a really smart person. I mean, just by hearing you talk, I can tell you're very smart. And because of circumstances, because of life, and because of we don't know what we don't know, we get stuck in these facets of life that we put ourselves into because we think that there isn't much more. And again, that's my pet peeve with the education system, because like you, something as simple as understanding your mind, I think that should be a part of elementary curriculum. I don't think that that's anything that should be reserved to any elite or to any college education, because understanding that we all have an inner critic, and that our inner critic literally becomes what we hear from our primary caregivers, that becomes our inner voice growing up. So that all that you can and this, all of that, that's not you. That's just the programming that you got from just hearing it in your environment repeatedly. And now their voice became your voice. And we think that that's our voice. And now it's making us feel a certain way. And now we're acting a certain way. And it's like, oh my God, this could be fixed so easy. Teaching self-awareness and critical thinking is not hard. Teaching growth mindset, teaching gratitude, that's not difficult.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I love all of that. I think that instead of having this gender ideology, you replace that.
Exactly.
But the problem is that they don't want that. Because come on, I mean, why are you worried about telling kids about how to have sex? Why are you even encouraging that type of behavior? I'm not telling you to be a prude. You do whatever you want. You know what I mean? You live your own life. However, what is knowing about sex going to produce in that child's future? Is it going to be something fruitful, something worth knowing? Or is this going to add to, more abortions? Because you're encouraging to have sex before marriage. These are the kinds of things that you're encouraging. So, of course, you're going to feed into a society where you get more abortions, where you have more sexual STDs. Like, so all these different things, because you're saying, hey, it's cool, just go ahead and do it. This is how you do it. This is who you can do it with. They're encouraging it.
Oh, yeah. Don't worry, because we have a solution. We have Planned Parenthood. I just love the name. Planned Parenthood. How are you planning any type of parenting? You're an abortion clinic. It's just crazy to me. And I was reading an article and I was frozen to see that now in the sex ed curriculum, they're teaching such things as gooning. Now, my point is, and this is why, I think it's important that we talk about this stuff, because most parents are not aware of these things. And it's like, even when they sign off, even when they have an option to opt out or to stay in, they don't really know what they're teaching their kids. And now we used to get sexual education classes in junior high. Now we're getting it as early as in 4th grade. Some states like Colorado are including it younger. But my point is, why does any teacher in any school have to teach a child about gooning? I didn't even know the terminology. I don't know if you've heard. Gooning is when you're about to orgasm, you're in that state, staying in that state for as long as possible. Well, they call it gooning now, and this is things that they teach in the curriculum. My question again is, why would it be necessary for a teacher to be teaching this to a child? And the way that I see it, wow, doesn't this just open up the door for abuse? So you're normalizing this type of sexual talk with adults, and you're making this type of conversation something so casual, so normal, right? So now this opens the door for any stranger, particularly on social media, to come and to now have these conversations. And so since you're already accustomed to having the conversations, you don't see it as anything strange. Why? I mean, this is what you were taught, and it's just easier to abuse kids. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but why else would you do it?
It's funny. My mom said years and years ago, she's like, when they passed gay marriage, and she said, watch, the next thing will be pedophilia. And I was like, Mom, you're crazy. You're crazy. That's not going to happen. And then today, here it is that it is happening right in front of our eyes. And there are Americans signing off on it, saying that, yeah, that's what's really going to make that child feel complete, is being able to talk about sex openly, knowing how to have all kinds of sex with whoever they want, to have no moral compass whatsoever. You just keep sleeping with everything that walks, just keep on doing it. And let's continue to perpetuate this type of lifestyle so that no one is ever able to have new problems.
It's a perpetual cycle. And what I always tell young adults is that it does not lead to happiness. We see it. Now we live in a world where debauchery is the norm. I mean, I never thought that we would be seeing furries walking down the street like an everyday thing. Men in leashes, people completely naked. I mean, stripping in front of children. Like, this is like family fun now. It goes back to the overtone window. It's making something that you would never accept and slowly introducing it until it becomes acceptable, slowly introducing it until it becomes the norm. And this is exactly what we're seeing today. But what I always tell you to pay attention to is, are you happier? Because our youth have never been sadder than they are today, more depressed, with more anxiety. So obviously the answer to a happy life is not all the sex you want. It's not all the drugs you want. It's not being trans or changing your sex. The happiness comes from, like you said, it comes from God. It comes from having a deep sense of knowing and having a purpose, something that is meaningful, that even when life is crappy, because it's going to be crappy so many times, life is really about fixing problems. But when you have that knowing, when you know yourself, when you have a purpose, when there is meaning in your life, and it's not the alcohol, it's not the drugs, or it's not sex, it's something meaningful, then you can handle everything else. And that's the message that I want to like put out there, because it's really hard for youth now. It's really hard for them to decipher like what to do.
Well, they're being pushed and convinced that this is the way that they should live, rather than, like, in all honesty, even though I experienced everything I experienced, God had a handle in everything that would happen to me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he prepared different people to just pursue my heart. I had my grandmother, I had Miss Rogers, I had Miss Durham, you know what I mean? All these women, that would love me and really help me and say, hey, introduce me to God. My grandma got me in the church, and, I would write a play and I would speak in front of other teenage girls at the church. But eventually I got in my own way. And, I would start drinking and doing drugs. And so what was introduced to me fell to the side. However, because they did that, I was able to come back to that same place and be able to build off of that, because I had a good foundation that was created by my caregiver. My grandma would take care of me all throughout high school. And she made me from F's to B's and A's because she paid attention to me. Nobody really had paid attention to me. I was kind of just lost. And I think a lot of kids get lost, man.
Yes.
Like, parents, even today, a lot of them will just give them a tablet as a solution. You know what I mean? Like, let's give them lots of drugs. Like, my grandma did take me to the psychiatrist on my ADHD medicine. However, she spent time with me. Like, I couldn't do anything. Like, if I wanted to go and do something, like, we had to have a study session. You know what I mean? We went to church together. Like, we cooked together. She spent time with me, and I think that's what the youth is lacking, is spending time with their parents. And same thing as they should have their friends. It should be a little bit of everything, and I think today it's just a lot of the wrong things rather than, a little bit of all the right things.
Yeah, that's really important. And I always say this, you are the habits that you live. Because when you think about us human beings, it's like the easiest way for me to explain it to a young person. We function on patterns. Like a computer functions on computer programs, humans, we function on patterns. That's all it is. Like, you're driving yourself mad, drinking yourself to death, or trying to escape your thoughts, and it's just a pattern. All you got to do is change the pattern. But until you realize that, until I realized that, that's when I got really mad, and I was like, I'm going to become a mindset coach for youth, because that really pissed me off. Like, to not even understand something as simple as that, it's just a pattern and I could change it. I can control that. And when you start understanding stuff like that, it's like life then becomes simple for you, that we are the habits that we keep. And habits is everything. People think that a habit is just like an addiction or something like that. No, your habit is everything. From the minute that you wake up, the first thing you do, you brushing your teeth, you get, all of those are habits. They're patterns that we form. Our thinking process, they're habits, they're patterns. And when we start learning that and breaking them down and saying, okay, well, let's start with my thoughts. Are these thinking patterns that I have, are they helping me? Like, are they doing any good for me or anybody else? No. Okay, so why don't I just stop thinking that? Why don't I just eliminate that, I try to tell young people, become like a security guard. Imagine like you have this really awesome mansion that is your head. You just wouldn't let anyone inside your mansion, would you? Because they're going to make it dirty. They're going to ruin it. So you're going to be very selective of who you allow inside there, right? That's how you should treat your mind and your body. Everything that you allow inside your mind and your body, look at it that way. Is it good for me? And if it's not,
Absolutely.
then change it.
It's funny because I had to go through some therapy when I had my last DUI, and I was with this girl for quite a few years, all while she was married. And I had been sober about 6 months, and I went to a therapy session with this lady, and I was telling her how much I didn't enjoy going down to see her anymore. Like, that it was always like irritating. And she's like, you don't have to go if you don't want to. I was like, oh, I
That's
don't have to
happened
hang
to
out.
me.
Are you kidding me? And I would go one more time. And, I was laying next to her, and I had just woken up, and I said, did I get sober to be with somebody this mediocre? Because she was still drinking, doing her thing. But it was just like, I deserve more. And I got up and I never went back again. It was just that simple. Just like you said, sometimes you just don't even recognize that it's just that simple to change.
Right. But it does take the awareness. It takes two things like that you realize, it's like, one, you have self-worth now. So you realize, what am I doing? I'm better than this. You deserve better. And the second one is, sometimes it's a combination. It's like, we don't have that high self-esteem. We don't have that love for ourselves that is required to make that decision. And the second one is that we've given our control to the world. We are so used to, from an early age, giving our control out there that we don't even realize that we can make a decision to end a relationship if it's not working for us, and we don't even realize it. And we're like, again, like that dog sitting on the nail going, "Arr, arr," you know what I mean? And we're still sitting on that nail thinking, God, that goddamn nail hurts, and never knowing, well, you could just get up and move, buddy.
Nobody's saying you have to stay.
Exactly. Exactly. I wanted to ask you one last thing because I think it's really important. And it has to do with, we both work with the organization Gays Against Groomers, and I so love the work they do. I think it's so important. But being the fact that you are a lesbian and seeing everything that is going on today, I think of it myself. When I was young, I would have been wooed into the movement now that is called gender affirming care. What do you think about what's happening? You being who you are, would you have been romanticized into maybe, yeah, going into medical care, even possibly surgery? What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, because first of all, I was mutilating from age 8. So I already had a spirit of destruction, that I deserve, that there's something wrong with me, or I deserve this, or you know what I mean? Like I wanted to feel something other than what it was that I was feeling on the inside. These are all the same things. It's just played out a little bit different for this generation, unfortunately, because I have scars that make my arms very unrecognizable. You know what I mean, like they're not nice. I was never nice to myself. So I deeply, sympathize on how easily I could have been influenced to, cutting off my breast, or, changing my name, or ingesting hormones that would have permanently altered me as a person and my body as well. So it makes me very sad that instead of us looking to uplift kids, that we are doing even more damage today than we were doing back then. A lot of people be like, "Oh, parents didn't know how to parent. They were unemotional. They did this and that." And I mean, granted, they could have been better, but we're also all human. I think a lot of people forget that parents have kids and there's no instructions on how to do it. They're just doing it. And a lot of the time, they're doing it at a very young age, and they really haven't experienced much life. So, these profound thoughts that I have today were not the thoughts that I embodied when I was 18, 20 years old. So I think people put a lot of blame on parents uh, to take away from their own participation in their own life. Like, if your life sucks, 9 times out of 10, it's trouble of your own making. You know what I mean? I'm not saying bad things happen, you don't experience those things, you do. But you also have the capability of handling it, differently if you want to. And a lot of the time I didn't realize that. Like I could have told my mom that I was raped. I could and even though I didn't understand what that was, I didn't have the vocabulary for it, things happen exactly the way that were always going to happen. And it was going to take that so that I could help others. That's why I'm so passionate about gays against gays. That's why I understand the mind of not only the children, but also the predator. My father was a predator. But my father was kidnapped when he was like 3 years old, and they didn't find him for 3 years. And his father was horrible. So you know what I mean? Not justifying why he did it or made it okay, but I understood that he didn't know any better, and he went down a road that he shouldn't have gone down. However, I always watched my father want to be better. Even though he was there was a lot of things about him that were bad. I would have a relationship with my father, and on some kind of level, we were always distant. However, I would watch him. I would watch him try to be better. He just didn't know any better. He just couldn't quite get it together. I buried my father in January 2022. He would pass away of a heart attack, overweight, heavy smoker, and I think that when you bury a parent, it makes you think about life a little bit differently. And I just kind of like to share that, I see how many people are hurting, and I just want to help. And I don't want to be mean. I don't want to be judgmental. Like, even with the predators, they're awful. Those things are awful. And they have stories too. We need to be more aware so that there's not more stories like that. You don't
Yes.
nip it in the bud. You
Yeah.
don't just like acknowledge things that are happening. The fact that they don't teach different things in the education system, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many different avenues in which we could be helpful. Like, we shouldn't want there to be predators. Not just like, okay, just kill all the predators. Okay, well, why do we have all these predators? Do you ever think about that? Why are these people wanting to cause so much harm? I don't believe that all of these people are just born evil, like that, to the point where they can't change, or where maybe they never have to experience or go through that, or harm somebody. Like, that's the way I like to think about it.
So it's a problem with society. It all goes back to you know what you know because that's what you've been taught. You see it in 100 years. I mean, the way that society is slowly and gradually changing. And so I think that's why it is happening. And I think that the saying hurt people cannot be more true. And depends how you were hurt, that's how you're going to hurt others. Some people hurt people sexually, some people hurt people financially, some people hurt people psychologically. There's different ways, there's different types of predators. They're not only sexual. I have a lot of empathy because, I understand that, we all fall on a spectrum and, we all have different tendencies. For example, I like women. I was raised Jehovah's Witness until I was 26 years old. So I don't really have communication with my family because to a Jehovah's Witness, that's about the worst thing that you can be. I understand that there's different levels. The thing that worries me is that there are people that are compassionate, but then they don't have like the critical thinking skills that we might have. And for example, you see things happening in society that now we're going from calling pedophiles to calling them maps because we don't want to offend them or hurt their feelings. I haven't posted this video, but I have it set to post. But it's a teacher talking to kids, and this is in the UK, but she's basically telling the kids, and this is a 6th grade class, not to call pedophiles, that's mean, and they're people too, and they just happen to have a different sexual nature, that they just like little kids, but not all of them act down on it, and not all of them are bad. And so it worries me because it goes back to the normalization again. And if we start normalizing these things, then we get our children closer to danger. And so I feel like there needs to be a little bit more of a gap when it comes to children.
I'm more so really concerned. I think that if you harm a child, you should get penalized to the fullest extent. My thought also is, now, how do we go about not having more victims turn into predators? And I think a lot of people aren't looking at either side. Like, you know what I mean? Not like, here you are justifying that. Oh, don't call them a predator. Don't call them a groomer. Call them a map. Make them feel better for being who they are. You know what I mean? Like that sexual orientation. And that's why I really don't like the slogan, love is love. I don't agree with it, because love isn't just love. You know what I mean? Like, because it's very convoluted. It could be like, oh, that woman loves that woman. Like, love is love. And then it is perverse and turned around and saying, that man loves that little girl. Who are you to say what love is? It's just twisted. You know what I mean? It flipped over just that quick. And I think that's what my mom, like, when they introduced, if you let that go door, it was going to always open up this door. And even though, you know what I mean, like, you want to be sympathetic towards, the gay community and allow that, unfortunately, when you open the door, more was always going to come in. It is, whether you want to agree with it or not. Like, it just is what it is.
Everything has been taken to such an extreme now that now we do have to make a choice. We do have to pick sides because we're given no choice but to. It's either this way or this way. Now it's like you can't be gay. Now you gotta, if you're gay, now you gotta be trans and you gotta chop off your penis. You gotta cut off your boobs. It's like, wait. What happened? So there is no in between anymore. It's either this or this.
And I think that we like to think that there was always an in between, but I don't think that there was. It's either you're one way or you're the other. And then when you live in on both sides, you know what I mean? Eventually, like you're always going to have to choose a way. It sucks, but I mean, it's the truth, all the things I used to run towards now leads to so much more damage than I can even fathom, and completely destroyed me as a person. And then I look at my life for the last 5 years, putting everything I can, loving God and helping others. The price and the payoff, has been quite drastic, the life I used to live. So, I mean, for me, like today, I don't live a lukewarm life. Oh, well, it's okay to abort children. As long as, I don't do it, it's fine. I'm justifying babies being killed, because I don't want to step out in faith and say, hey, that's not right. I'm a person that has experienced sexual trauma in so many different ways that whether or not, all that happened to me, like I cannot think for one moment that that was okay. All these different things are saying that it's okay and it's not. Like sleeping around with people, encouraging children to sleep around with themselves. Like this is all not okay. Whatever, if you want to live your life like that, I think that's exactly how you should. However, I have based my life to educate others to think differently. Like you don't have to think like me. You don't. Like you can think however you want, but I'm going to educate the ones that are willing to learn something. A lot of people, like you were talking about, losing views or losing followers. I mean, originally I started making videos because I drank all the time, so I didn't know how to fill up my time. And so I started watching this guy called Conservative Ant. And I was like, well, if that dude can do that, I can do this. You know what I mean? And I posted a video. And my videos were always for me. They were never for you. If you enjoyed it, I was happy to hear that. But the video was for me to get better, for me to be able to verbalize what was in my head and,
Going back to what we were saying, because if there's families that are listening to this that maybe have a young adult who's experiencing self-doubt, the thing that I always say is that we all experience self-doubt, especially in our teenage years. And now we're turning it all towards gender dysphoria. And only 2% of society really exhibits what you would call gender dysphoria. What we're seeing today is a mass psychosis that is happening. And it's because of different things, but this is what we're seeing today. And a lot of parents are scared and they think, well, if I don't take action, my child is going to hurt themselves. And I want them to understand you have a perfect story. You were someone that experienced sexual trauma, was hurting yourself. You were experiencing self-doubt. You yourself has said you probably would have undergone a procedure. And how much would you have regretted it now if you would have done something like that?
Anytime you take a temporary problem and use a permanent solution, it's never good.
Exactly.
You're taking temporary problems and giving it a permanent solution that you can never take back. They go, oh, you can get off hormones or you can change your gender back. It'll never be the same.
Never.
Not mentally, not physically, not emotionally, not spiritually. It'll never be the same.
And the sad truth about it is that 70% of the youth that experience this and the people that transition end up detransitioning because of this. Because the problem is that now we are not investigating, we're not doing enough work to see where this self-doubt is coming from. We are automatically assuming, oh, you're having challenges. Oh, you must be feeling like you're in the wrong body. And so this is becoming now the procedure. Like there is no questioning anymore. Now it goes straight into affirming. And we're already seeing all the cases of people with regret. And so I just want to tell every parent that is listening out there that if your child is struggling, imagine when you were young, struggling is a part of our human makeup. But when we're young, we struggle with our identity the most. And so I encourage to do research and to please have conversations, because most of the struggles that our youth are feeling is coming from a self-doubt, and the self-doubt has nothing to do with their gender. It has to do with who they are. Most kids don't know how to deal with their anxieties, with their frustrations. Something that you were mentioning, and you've mentioned it a couple of times, and obviously you find it as important as I do. You talk about self-control. A lot of what youth feel today is they have all this frustration and they have no skills on how to self-control or self-regulate their emotions. And then we're giving them all these, I guess, pseudo solutions, and we're making the situations worse. And so to all the parents that are listening, it's time to just take a step back and to start getting back into the family unit and figuring your problems more on your home, like we used to do 20, 30 years ago. I feel like now, a child loses their dog or has a breakup or something happens, and they immediately have to run the child to a therapist, and now they go into therapy, and then they start with the medication. And I feel like what we need is a little bit more of skill training than therapy and affirming and all of this stuff. And like you said, going back to traditional values and remembering that you might not want to worship God, but you're always going to worship something. Human beings were created, and there's actually a gene where we were born to worship. We were born to look for something bigger, greater than ourselves, and point towards that. So you're always going to be worshiping something. So be very careful on the habits that you adopt, whether they're your thinking patterns or your actions, because these things, they will become your God. Like you said, the alcohol will become this is the God, I would say, of 70, 80% of today's society. So we've just traded one God for another. Is there any last words of wisdom or something you would like to say to family and teens before we start ending this awesome conversation?
I would just encourage people to understand that life is only about two things, and that is to love God and to help others. And the best way we can help others is by helping others. Everybody has the capability of being of service. And it doesn't necessarily have to be with, helping bring awareness to society about what's happening to our youth. Maybe it's the homeless. Maybe it's, the elderly. Whatever it is that you're passionate about, be of service and go serve your community. That's why we are where we are today. We're not being of service. And if adults aren't being of service, these children aren't seeing be of service. And then it just is that repeated pattern that we've been talking about. We really need to get involved. I always tell parents that understand that you might not care about anybody else's kid. You're just worried about your kid. To me, that's pretty self-centered, but okay. There are also parents out there that do nothing at all. This is why people get into the school boards. This is why they're able to push these agendas. That's why you have pornographic books in your children's library, and it's right under your nose. And your children are being groomed to be sexualized and for them to not have any self-worth outside of their identity. Like, get involved. And it's fun. Like I go to Alcoholics Anonymous. I have friends in GAG. I have friends at the gym. I have friends for different things that I need in my life. Service in every area of our life is so important. You go to work and you open the door for the guy that you can't stand at work. You know what I mean? I'm being of service. Like, do it in the small so that you can be trusted with the great. I really hope that people chew on that and think about that. It's like you could be the one thing that you need for somebody.
It's very interesting that you said that, and it's a great way to end the podcast, because us humans, we have 6 basic human needs. I don't know if you've read the articles from Tony Robbins, but he talks about the 6 basic human needs. And the last need, he says, is the need that most humans never get filled, And it's the most rewarding of all. And that need is contribution. Contribution is our sixth human need. And when we fulfill that need is when we become truly fulfilled. So just chew on that. And for young people, I'll tell you why it's important. Because when you're young, you're so into yourself, you're so into your head, you're so worried about everything. And the way for you to be able to calm all of that going on inside your head is by doing that contribution. Get into a charity, start helping pets, go and join a rescue. You're going to feel so good about yourself. You're going to help others, and it's going to give your life meaning. And you're going to start seeing that those voices in your head, they're slowly going to start to change. And that anxiety and that yucky and discomfort that you feel for yourself is also going to start simmering down. It's simple, but it's not easy. But I can guarantee you it's going to be more rewarding than anything else you can do. I want to thank you so much for this conversation, Jana. It was very interesting. I'm going to leave Jana's links so everyone that wants, they can connect with her. Go watch her on social media. She has great content. For those of you that are listening, if you're not following us, please follow us. And we thank you so much for being a part of our podcast. And until the next time, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.
Hey Rockstars, that wraps up another electrifying episode of the Teen Rockstar Entrepreneur Podcast, where we dive deep into the journeys of incredible minds shaping their destinies in the world of business, solo, and entrepreneurship. Now, before you hit that pause button, I've got some exciting news for you. If you're ready to take control of your life, eliminate anxiety, insecurity, and fear, then look no further. Head over to the teenrockstarentrepreneur.org website to grab your very own copy of the comprehensive 140-page Designer Life Blueprint Teen Workbook. This workbook isn't just a guide, it's a roadmap to unleashing your true potential. Packed with insights, exercises, and strategies, it's your key to crafting the life you've always dreamed of. A life where challenges are conquered, dreams are pursued, and happiness is your companion. So what are you waiting for? Visit teenrockstarentrepreneur.org and kickstart your journey to a life of purpose, passion, and success. Stay inspired, stay motivated, and remember, your journey is just getting started. Until next time, keep rocking and rolling towards your dreams.